These are Nebraska corn farmers. They work in acres, not hours, harvesting the energy and climate solutions the world needs. We are proud to stand with you.
The success of tomorrow's soy industry depends on the actions we take today. The future is here, and the time to move is now.
Market Journal Television for Agricultural Business Decisions is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources in partnership with the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. Promotional support provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine and partial funding provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board.
Well, hi everyone, I'm Bryce Duskett, and thank you very much for joining us today on Market Journal. As temperatures plummeted this past week, hope you've been able to stay warm. A special shout out to those of you who have already begun your calving season. On today's broadcast, there are a couple of open positions on the Nebraska Soybean Board, as well as the United Soybean Board. We'll give you those details. Plus, it's that time of the year again. ARC versus PLC decisions need to be made, so we'll go over those options. But first, we're going to kick off today's broadcast with an in-the-field update. Nebraska Extension is excited to announce the return of the Innovative Youth Corn Challenge. This immersive contest is open to 4-H members age 8 and up, as well as in-school FFA members. Registration is now open online for the 2025 Innovative Youth Corn Challenge. This competition not only fosters a spirit of innovation in corn production and challenges participants to improve corn yields in order to meet the growing population, but it also serves as a platform for recognizing dedication and excellence within 4-H and FFA communities.
The Innovative Youth Corn Challenge, we've partnered with the Nebraska Corn Board for the past 13 years, and every year we have some amazing youth who compete in this program. So it's a season-long program where the youth essentially do their own on-farm research practices, so they can test any type of a management production practice, such as like seeding rates or anything like that, or they can test a different product that maybe industry has available. And so during that whole growing season, from beginning phases of planting it all the way through doing crop scouting and managing it to harvest, those youth are involved with that whole process, trying to figure out if there's an innovative practice that actually will yield more than their check plot. And so this year we had the Arlington FFA chapter, which was the winning team. They had 24 different strips that they had tested. This team also had utilized drones and time-elapsed cameras with the ag literacy video that they completed. And this is several years that they've competed in the program, and you can just tell the amount of impact that it's had and how much they've learned from this whole process from being involved with it. Those youth that have experienced it have some really deep, in-depth experiential learning, because they're going through a whole season with collecting data, learning the economic analysis. And so it really has shown there's some of the youth that have completed are now coaches of some other youth. So it really has encouraged those youth to maintain a career within the agricultural field.
While the competition is keen to let participants blaze their own trail, so to speak, this year's competition has also expanded to offer options for competing teams to coordinate their efforts alongside multiple ag businesses and industries.
This year, we're still going to allow the youth to decide kind of their create your own adventure path if you have it. But then we're going to create and add a second pathway so youth can actually reach out to some business and industry. Maybe there's a agricultural business that's wanting to test out a certain product. And so we're going to involve business and industry so youth who might not have access to their own land can work with business and industry to test a certain product. And ultimately, we're pretty open with this being a new concept, but we could have a product tested in, certain county on the eastern part of the state as well as the western part of the state, testing essentially the same product, but just working with a company rep to kind of help mentor them and help guide them. So hopefully this will eliminate some of the barriers of, youth maybe not having access to some land, or maybe not having an advisor who has that agronomy knowledge to help support them within the process.
The registration deadline to join the competition is coming up on April 1st. Cash prizes will be awarded to the top 3 teams. More detailed guidelines and participation information can be found on the Crop Watch Corn Challenge page, or you can also contact Brandy Vanderwall directly. Her information is at the bottom of your screen now. Well, up next, the 2018 Farm Bill, originally set to expire back in 2023, has once again been extended for another year. That means that ag producers will face another important decision on agriculture risk coverage, or ARC, versus price loss coverage, PLC, in 2025. With changing economic conditions, shifting price projections, and updated support levels for ARC and PLC, you'll want to make sure you give this enrollment careful consideration. Alex Makovica recently spoke with Dr. Brad Lubin to break down this decision.
We're talking about ARC and PLC elections, as you mentioned, due in April. What do producers need to know right now?
Sign up is underway. Producers have the same decision under the Agriculture Risk Coverage, or ARC program, or the Price Loss Coverage, PLC program. The same decision they've had for the last decade, frankly. But it is a different year. The safety net actually gets stronger this year, in spite of it just being a simple extension of existing programs. The safety net goes up a bit this year, and the economic condition, unfortunately, has gone down. So the importance of the safety net, the importance of this decision really matters.
Yeah, talk about the status of the economy that we're in right now, and break it down as to why it is so important.
Yeah, so think about the outlook for the ag economy. We've seen prices coming down now for the last couple of years. We see input costs that are relatively sticky, and so we have really tightening margins. Under those tighter margins, the more we focus on what kind of safety net we use, what kind of risk management protection we use, well, the farm program has an important component in that safety net. Of course, crop insurance does as well, and marketing decisions and farm management decisions do too. But this might be a year where for the last 3 or 4, we thought farm programs were less important because prices were up here and the safety net's down here. Well, guess what? Prices have fallen. The safety net's pretty critical this year.
So, Brad, when producers are thinking about both of these coverage options, what information do they need to be thinking about for their operation?
Yeah. Let's first recognize where we are economically, figure out our financial position, know how much downside risk we can afford, how much we're exposed to, and what our true sort of protection levels need to be. Some combination of farm programs and crop insurance decisions will help a producer prepare for it and manage that bottom line. Think of the farm program decision here. You've got an ARC program tied to a moving average. So it's a safety net that triggers at 86% of a benchmark yield times a benchmark price. Well, if you figure that out just on the price side alone, we're very close to the money now, which means we've already come down from averages to the point that we're almost ready to trigger, even assuming average yields. Look at the PLC program. Corn as an example. In 2023, the safety net triggered for PLC at $3.70 a bushel. In 2024, it had gone up to $4.01. In 2025, it goes up to $4.26. So the safety net's actually gone up more than 10%, even as prices have come down. It's close to the money too, unfortunately. We're seeing safety nets that will provide a lot of downside risk protection. It's an important decision between the two this year.
Brad, in addition to the economic status, we're also looking at political status, and that has a role because this is part of the Farm Bill. These programs are.
Right.
Where are we at right now?
You're right. We faced the ARC and PLC program decision again this year because we had a simple one-year extension again of the Farm Bill. We have yet to see a Farm Bill approach real discussion in Congress and the finish line. In 2023, it expired. We ended up with a late year, one-year extension that got us through 24. In 2024, we actually started the discussion in Congress, and the House Agriculture Committee, under the leadership of Chairman Glenn Thompson, moved a bill through committee and had it voted through in a bipartisan fashion. It didn't make it to the floor, or at least it didn't get scheduled for the floor. On the Senate side, we never saw language proposed even until after the election, so nothing ultimately came to fruition. We face that same issue again. All right, a one-year extension gets us into 2025. The longer it takes this year to get to that debate, I think the more difficult it will be.
And the longer it takes, what does that mean for producers? What are the implications when it comes down to those farms?
Yeah. In late 2024, we were debating things that were holding up the Farm Bill about how to pay for proposed improvements to the safety net, how to deal with conservation funding between the Farm Bill and some one-time money, how to deal with nutrition spending, which is always an issue, how to deal with some spending in the conservation or the Commodity Credit Corporation, the CCC. We were focusing on, if I might know, we were focusing on nickels and dimes. And we couldn't pass the Farm Bill because we couldn't find the right nickels and dimes to get it done. At the end of the year, we passed $31 billion of additional assistance in ag disaster and economic assistance for agriculture. So when it comes down to it, the money shows up, but for a proper sort of regular ordered debate on legislation, it's really difficult. If we start right away in 2025, one could imagine it sort of moving through under the existing framework and fiscal debate. The longer it takes, I think the more we fight about every dollar.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned that producers have until April to enroll in this program. How do they start those conversations? What else is important to note?
Starts with a visit to the USDA Farm Service Agency office in their local area. The FSA office will help you through the enrollment procedures and give you the details. For many that have been in it for years before, it's a pretty simple process, updating records, updating acres as necessary, but ultimately making a decision about whether to change your election or not. And then importantly, recognizing even if you don't change the decision you had made in previous years, you still have to sign up for the year. So there is an enrollment decision and appointment to be made.
Now, the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Center for Agricultural Profitability has posted a webinar recording on this topic. You can find a link to that if you'd like to dive a little bit deeper. You can find that online on the Market Journal homepage. Up next, it's our time of the week where we shift our attention over to the markets. And joining the broadcast this week was bar chart senior analyst Darren Newsom. We had the chance to visit with him on Thursday morning. Joining us this week to offer his thoughts when it comes to the markets is Darren Newsom with Bar Chart. Darren, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming back to Market Journal.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on again, Bryce.
Absolutely. Let's start with the corn market. Ethanol demand has been strong, but we're also seeing large fund positions when it comes to corn. Is this enough to keep prices supported, do you think, or do you see some downside risk ahead for the corn market?
You know, there's always some downside risk when we start, playing trade games. So, and most recently we've seen, the announcements of tariffs on steel and aluminum, with Mexico being the second largest exporter of steel into the United States and the third largest of aluminum into the United States. So, we know Mexico right now, the officials in Mexico are watching Brazil's crop very closely, because right now the planting of the safrinha crop, the second crop in Brazil, has been delayed because of rains and then slowing down the soybean harvest. So, but I have a feeling that as soon as the Mexican buyers feel more comfortable with Brazil's production of that second crop, that some of these sales that we've been seeing here from the United States will start to dry up. And so I think that's a real risk here because, as you mentioned, funds have built a large net long futures position. And yes, we still see, a bullish May, July futures spread in the corn market, again, for all the reasons basically coming out of Brazil. But these could certainly change. And so, it's certainly going to be something that we have to watch here over the coming weeks.
Okay, I think it was the start of this week. We did see a Mexican buy of U.S. corn. Did that surprise you, considering the tension that is building when it comes to trade?
No, right now what it looks like is that Mexico continues to kind of build up its supplies, knowing that at some point it's probably going to shut off its purchases from the United States. And so, we are seeing them build kind of a bit of a book here, and shipping as much as they can before everything hits the fan. And so, will this be a number of days, a number of weeks, a month or so? We'll see. But we can see that these purchases and these shipments that continue to happen are just kind of a buildup for the expected problems not that far down the road.
Okay, let's go from corn to soybeans now. Talk about Brazil. You hinted at it. Their soybean crop coming in fast. How much do you think that's going to be pressuring U.S. prices? And is there any hope for a rebound when it comes to soybean exports?
No, I don't think so. And in fact, if we look at the latest weekly export sales and shipments tables, we see a steady decline in demand for U.S. soybeans, and some of this is seasonal. As we get into the latter part of winter and more supplies from Brazil become available. I mean, certainly, we know that the U.S. is a secondary player, has become a secondary player, was made a secondary player in the not too distant past, and that hasn't changed. And so, the world's largest buyer, China, is still sitting there waiting for the bulk of Brazil's crop to come in and make it to port. And so that's where the interest is going to be. And we can certainly see that in the way the market's playing out, not just the futures market, but future spreads. I mentioned the May, July spread in corn, it was still bullish. But as we look at the soybean spreads, both the March, May and the May, July are creeping towards bearish levels of carry, as we come to the end of this week and we start looking ahead to the end of February. So again, nothing overly surprising about any of this. We've continued to take ourselves out of the game, and I don't see it changing anytime soon.
Darren, on last week's episode, we let people know that you were going to be our guest, so a few questions did roll in. One, when it comes to wheat, I'll just read this. Jeff wrote in, he said, winter kill concerns seem to be popping up again in the plains. Your thoughts, do you think that could actually impact wheat production, or is it once again just market noise?
It's market noise. I mean, it's winter wheat for a reason. First, wheat is a cockroach. I mean, it's the cockroach of the grain world. It takes a lot to kill it. And it's winter wheat. It's supposed to face winter conditions. It hasn't been warm enough for the crop to come out of dormancy yet. In some areas, there isn't a lot of snow cover, things like this, but we've seen this before. But if we want to know the market's opinion, all we have to do is look out, particularly in the hard red winter market, is look out at the July, September, and September, December future spreads. The July, September spread was covering 76% calculated full commercial carry. The bearish threshold is theoretically at 67%, so it's incredibly bearish. And the September, December was covering 68, 69%. So, I mean, the market's saying it's not worried about it. And realistically, neither should we. I mean, we're just at that point of the year where people have to make up things about wheat to be able to talk about, or there's simply nothing to visit about.
Yeah, appreciate your thoughts on that topic. Let's quickly get a question in here about the cattle markets. Of course, they've been under pressure here over the last couple of weeks. Cash trade slipping, box beef prices also following. Do you think that's just seasonal, because that does seem to happen this time of the year, or is this looking like a bigger shift when it comes to the cattle market?
We have to be careful with cattle here. For many weeks now, the months now, the market has looked overbought. It looked like it's way top heavy, and so all it was going to take was to see kind of the cracks start to form in the cash market. And that certainly seems to be the case. So now we'll see if that can continue. We've already, we saw lower cash prices again this week. We've seen boxed beef prices coming down. The feeder cattle cash market has been all over the place. And all of this puts the large futures position, net long futures position in both live cattle and feeder cattle at risk, because those traders aren't going to want to sit there and continue to hold if the cash markets are starting to break down. So while we don't have any clear indication that this is going to be a longer term problem, we need to keep a close eye on these markets, because it could certainly develop into one.
I appreciate Darren spending some of his time with us this week to share his thoughts when it comes to both the grain and livestock markets. Up next, agriculture is all about innovation. So when the Nebraska Manufacturing Alliance announced its 2024 winner for the annual Coolest Thing Made in Nebraska contest, it is no surprise that a legendary ag innovation took home the honors. The groundbreaking Valley Center Pivot claimed the title. Invented by a Nebraskan in the late 1940s, the center pivot patent was granted in 1952. After producing 19 units, the inventor sold the licensing rights to Robert Doherty, head of Valley Manufacturing, in 1953. And the rest, as they say, is history. You can dive into the full story in the February issue of the Nebraska Farmer. It is now time for weather with Nebraska Extension ag climatologist Eric Hunt. Eric, snow blanketed much of the state over the past week. How much snowfall did we see statewide, and what are you tracking when it comes to the week ahead?
Thanks, Bryce. More on those snowfall totals a little bit. What I'm tracking this week is the full dose of winter weather from Mother Nature. Starting on Monday, we're going to have troughing across the broader northern section of the country, and there will be a short wave moving from Montana in toward Nebraska during the day on Monday. That's going to bring a period of snowfalls, probably starting Monday morning and then spreading east-southeast across the state during the day on Monday. Not going to be a significant amount of snow, but I do think there is a pretty good chance for at least the north central and eastern section of the state to pick up over an inch. Some places may pick up closer to 1 to 2 inches would be my best guess for most of us across the state. Then on Tuesday, we have another little system moving in through the southwest, or from the southwest into the central and southern plains. Right now, that looks to track mostly to our south. That will keep most of the snowfall in Kansas. Southern Nebraska likely will pick up another couple inches from this, but most places north of I-80 should probably be relatively minimal, if anything at all. But if this storm system does track a little bit further toward the north, and especially if it tracks a bit more northeastward, then I do think most places east of North Platte would have a chance of picking up another 2 to 4 inches of snow. In terms of total precipitation right now, I think we're looking at most of the state picking up between 1/10 and 1/4 of an inch. That would probably translate to roughly 3 to 4 inches of new snow for most of us, add to the total that we had earlier this week. But the biggest story coming up, though, is going to be the cold temperatures for most of next week, the complements of polar vortex stretching. And again, we're going to have surface high pressure over eastern Montana sliding slowly east-southeast over the coming days. And that's going to bring very, very cold temperatures from the Arctic straight down into Nebraska. Right now, the European model is showing potential for temperatures at noon on Tuesday be below zero. So we are looking at potential for sub-zero highs at least 1 or 2 days next week, particularly north central and northeastern Nebraska, maybe even down as far south as southeastern Nebraska a couple of days next week. Again, this may be a little bit overdone, but again, we're looking at very, very cold temperatures with potential of minimum temperatures getting to 20 to 25 below next Wednesday, Thursday morning. Wind chills likely will be sustained at 20 to 30 below for a good stretch of time for next week. For resources, the Nebraska Mesnet, nemesnet.unl.edu. We do have a cattle comfort index. I know it's calving season, so I know a lot of you might be interested in just how extreme these wind chills might be. In terms of the outlook, we are looking at temperatures staying a little bit colder toward the end of this next weekend, warming further west. We are looking at ridging moving back into the central U.S. as we head toward the end of the month. So I do think we will start thawing out after later next week. And I do think after Tuesday, Wednesday, we are probably done with the snow for at least the next 7 to 10 days. In terms of recent snowfall, we did pick up about 6 inches, a little bit more across portions of southeastern Nebraska, maybe a little bit between Kearney and Grand Island. Most of us had between 2 and 5 inches in the last 3 or 4 days, with a little bit lesser amounts here across northwestern Nebraska. Drought monitor, we did see a little bit of expansion of drought across portions of Dawson and Frontier and Lincoln counties, and expansion of severe drought in Morrill and Cheyenne counties. And here's the temperature precipitation roundup for the week ending February 8th, 2025. Back to you, Bryce.
All right, we'll be bracing for that cold weather snap hitting the state, Eric. Thanks for that update. Finally today, the Nebraska Soybean Board is driven by farmers for farmers. Right now, they're looking for passionate farmer leaders to help shape the future of the industry, whether that's through a seat on the Nebraska Soybean Board or on the United Soybean Board. We learned more about this opportunity at this week's Soil Health Conference, which took place in West Point. Market Journal's Bill Dodd was there, and he brings us those details now. Bill?
We got 3 positions open with the Nebraska Soybean Board. They'd represent us in districts 2, 4, and 8. To be a candidate to run for the Nebraska Soybean Board, you got to be an active producer of the past 5 years, actively grow soybeans over the past 5 years, and you got to reside in the district in which you are choosing to run. So we're looking for growers to run for those district positions and to represent the growers in their specific districts, on any soybean efforts going forward. Requirements of those growers is to actively participate in board meetings throughout the year. We'll have 4 to 5 local board meetings here in the state of Nebraska, most of those being in Lincoln. And what would happen at those board meetings would be setting budgets, planning for the future, making sure we are, driving our truck in the right direction in regards to what the grower wants in that certain district, making sure that industry aligns with the grower's needs on the actual farm. The goal of the Nebraska Soybean Board at the end of the day is ROI, and that's what I try to simplify it down to for everybody. Every decision that our board makes, our soybean farmers make, we look for a return on investment, whether that's in our community engagement sector, and we're trying to see an uptick in agricultural favorability here in the state of Nebraska, or for providing feedback to the farmer on a local basis, or conducting research with the University of Nebraska. We want to make sure every project that we push through, approve, we want to make sure we got some different performance indicators in there. We want to make sure it's moving in the right direction. The deadline to apply for the 3 districts here in the state of Nebraska would be on April 15th. You can apply by contacting our office at 402-441-3240. Ask for me, Andy, and we'll make sure we get you the petition and get you everything that you need to get filled out in order to do so. As the Nebraska Soybean Board, when you pay into the checkoff, if you're a soybean producer and pay into the checkoff, half of those dollars come in here to the state of Nebraska, and then we remit the other half of those dollars to the United Soybean Board. In doing so, there's 77 growers on the United Soybean Board. Nebraska is fortunate to have 4 grower representatives on the United Soybean Board, representing Nebraska's interests along the way. So those growers will, we're looking for applications to be turned in by our board, to our board, by February 28th. Our board at their March research meeting will do some interviews and select some growers to be put on a ballot to then be presented to the United States Department of Agriculture. And the Secretary of Ag will approve those and send those through later on in the year. We work very closely, the Nebraska Soybean Board works very closely with the United Soybean Board, and it's not a father-son type of connection there, but we're very close on a daily basis in everything that we do. We make sure we don't duplicate projects, and we make sure that the United Soybean Board always has Nebraska's interests at heart, and that's what our 4 representatives are for. But the United Soybean Board, when you run for the United Soybean Board, it's more of a national stage. There's some bigger projects that filter through there that might be a little bit more feasible to do on a national stage than it would be in the state of Nebraska. So we just ask those growers that represent the state of Nebraska when they do sit on the United Soybean Board, to always have Nebraska's interests at heart when they're going through those, and some of those ideas and just project costs are much bigger than we can handle. So it's nice to have other neighboring states that might have the same issues that we do here in the state of Nebraska at the same table, and us doing those projects together with other groups as well.
Thanks for that story, Bill. Now, if you're interested in any of those opportunities, we've included some informative links along with this story. Find those over on the Market Journal homepage. Well, that wraps up this week's show. If you did miss anything, we encourage you to subscribe to Market Journal on YouTube and follow along with the full broadcasts posted on Acres TV. Thanks for spending part of your week with us. We hope to see you next time. But until then, I'm Bryce Duskett, wishing you a safe and productive week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.